creator economy in Web3 is this idea that like you can build and monetize your own community without having to go through someone who will like take a large chunk of that from you. And that's what's really exciting, is that a lot of creators are now owning their own like communities, and their communities in return can also own a part of their work, or they can also own a part of the community in the form of like social tokens or creator tokens, or all these brand new sort of concepts that are very Web3.
Hi everyone, and welcome yet to another episode of NewForum. NewForum is powered by NewCoin Foundation and is focused on fostering the expansion of decentralized social applications, also known as Social 3.0, by forming an ecosystem and a community of visionaries, creators, and investors. It provides a safe space for thinkers to communicate, inform, and share ideas in order to ensure the conscious and ethical growth of a new web, embedding the values of care, freedom, and creativity.
And as always, we have a special guest in today's episode, Sarah Liu. Sarah graduated from Columbia University, and the challenges faced while pursuing law amid a pandemic led to a change of career. While on this path, Sarah somehow found himself falling down the rabbit hole. We cannot wait to hear how it all panned out, leading to them working within Web3 space. Sarah is part of Decentral Aliens, creating content for Layer 3 and building Blue Playground. We can't wait to begin the conversation with them.
Hey Sarah, we are super excited to have you with us today.
Hi guys, so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so Sarah, tell me, how was your whole journey into Web3? Like, it sounds super interesting, and I want to know like what got you into Web3 started.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I can begin with sort of my background and just what I was studying in undergrad. I grew up in Beijing, but I went to the US, to Columbia for undergrad. And I was studying political science there, mostly doing a lot of like political philosophy. So things you don't really think have like a real world application. But I was really interested in law. So I spent a lot of time pursuing that. Did a lot of internships in law, like worked with a judge, worked with the ACLU, really thought I was going to go to law school like right after college. And then I think the pandemic hit like in the middle of my senior year. So I think that shifted my perspective on a lot of things. Like, I think it made me realize that I didn't really want to be in a career where I was going to only be practicing one thing and doing one thing and staying in one country for the rest of my life. And especially seeing how my peers were trying like so many different things because remote work had finally became a thing. Crypto was just starting to heat up. Like a lot of people were working in really exciting industries that I thought, like life is short, like especially because the pandemic has shown us that anything can just sort of disrupt your plan. So I decided to just hop around and try out a few different industries and spaces that I thought would be interesting. First, I tried policy. So I was an intern at like a think tank in Beijing. Wasn't really for me, thought it was really boring. And then I dipped my toes into like startups and like entrepreneurship in China. And that was a really exciting space to be in too. But it was mostly like I worked for a social media startup. And we were doing a lot of like social media production and like content creator management. And it really burned me out to the point where I felt like all we were doing was just servicing these big platforms and, their algorithms. I felt really restricted in terms of like creativity and just like finding like communities that were passionate about what they're building, aside from like, getting views and likes. So then I started looking into Web3 because there's this whole buzzword like the creator economy. Started reading about that, and then I really tied it into like my previous work. Even though I felt burnt out at the startup, I feel like a lot of what I did gave me a lot of insight into like what this creator economy was all about. So the more I started reading into that, the more I started looking at like stuff like NFTs, as well as like digital communities and like DAOs. And it just got me really excited because I've always been like a fan of these online communities. especially in, like I grew up playing like Club Penguin and like Neopets and all these virtual like sites where everyone would gather. And I just thought it was like the perfect culmination of sort of like all my experiences. Like I love thinking about like the organization of like human society. I also love like being online and like just interacting with other people online. So I think naturally that just led me to explore like DAOs and everything that's really happening in Web3. So that is a very long-winded journey of like how I got here, but I think yeah. So now I'm like full-time doing it, and I'm really excited about it.
So I'm curious to know, what is your, like, if you could share with our community, what is your definition of the creator economy and what are the new possibilities for creators?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the creator economy that's very loosely defined in like Web 2 or Web 2.0, or just I guess if you're new to Web 3, like the age of the internet and these big platforms, is that, like creators were able to start monetizing their content. Like after Instagram became a thing, creators could take ads, they could get like sponsored posts, they could monetize by driving traffic to their page. And I think that's one that we're all used to, like, YouTube video content creators, Instagram, TikTok. We're all very familiar with that and like sort of how the creator economy works. But I think one thing that people sort of overlook, especially in this recent sort of like 10 years where a lot of creators have been monetizing through these platforms, is that like ultimately like the platforms still control how you get to monetize, as well as like how your data is used. And I think that's one thing that is different in Web3, where like you don't have this platform as just the aggregator of all this creator content. Instead, you have creators directly like selling their content to their audience or their patrons without a middleman or an agent. And I think that's really powerful, because a lot of the times, like these platforms will have algorithms that determine like what content is at the top. So what content gets more ad dollars or ad revenue. These platforms will favor like content that is like ad friendly or sponsor friendly. And all these things, like, these interests, like they're not really determined by the creators. Some creators can't even monetize. They're just creating content for free for people to enjoy, and it's the platform that gets to profit from it. So I think the creator economy in Web3 is this idea that like you can build and monetize your own community without having to go through someone who will like take a large chunk of that from you. And that's what's really exciting, is that a lot of creators are now owning their own like communities, and their communities in return can also own a part of their work, or they can also own a part of the community in the form of like social tokens or creator tokens, or all these brand new sort of concepts that are very Web3, but I think are honestly like giving creators more freedom and autonomy to sort of like really, I guess, own their work, in the sense that like not the middleman or the agent is not really profiting from it as much as it was in Web 2.
I really love the points that you make, and I was just thinking, my friend was telling me that she felt like creativity wasn't really valued in the right way or monetized in the right way, as like, it's just creativity. But if we think about it, if there's AI and all these things, like what is left? Human creativity is then the most valuable skill or the most valuable thing, how we communicate, how we build, and how we interact with people. And so yeah, I think you made super interesting points about, what Web3 can really bring. And I want to know, like, what kind of communities like are you already part of, and how do you kind of find these communities?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a big one that I started with was this like it's sort of it's a learning DAO. And it was one of the first ones that I encountered because I had a friend who was really into crypto. He had been into crypto for years, and he sent me, like, I told him I was interested in learning more about it, so he sent me this link about this like new DAO that was springing up. And this is like the DAO that I'm now in, called Decentralians. So Decentralians is also known as Invisible College, and Invisible College is essentially like a learning DAO where the students or like the people who are in the DAO, like they get to like own a part of the school and determine like what resources they want to see or like who they want to bring on to talk or like just, the general kind of thing, the general kind of direction that you want this organization to go in. So I thought this was super cool. I think the first day, like it was announced that this thing was going to happen. Like I joined the Discord. I started talking to people. I realized it was really important to have like a Twitter. So I created a Twitter. And then I decided to like just interact with others. And through Twitter, I think I just found like a ton of new, really exciting communities. Decent, like Invisible College is one of them. I'm also like in a bunch of like NFT communities, like Astro Girls is one that I'm really excited about. I've also been looking at just a bunch of DAOs like Cabin DAO and like Developer DAO, as well as like some of these NFT gated communities that have really just excited me because they have like just so many different niches and so many different types of people that are interested in like coming together for this single cause. And I think that's like the really exciting thing about Web3 is that you no longer just have to subscribe to like one platform where everyone knows how to be popular or like knows how to create content or knows how to like interact with other people in this very specific way. Like each community sort of has their own niche and sort of has their own interests and goals. And like as long as you align with that, then like your incentives are aligned and you still get to own a part of it, which is the really exciting part. So yeah, sorry, that's a bit long, but yeah, that's
No,
what I
it's
really love about
perfect.
Web3.
I think
Yeah.
I love how you take your time to explain things, and I think this would be really great for our community members who are like nearer to the space. And that leads me to my next, I say, curiosity or question. So we use the word community a lot in Web3, and like I'd say that the general definition that I guess everybody knows, a community to be is like a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So what is community? Like what's the definition of community for Web3 or crypto, like in the space in general?
I think, a lot of people are still figuring that out. And I do agree that is like a buzzword that is used constantly in Web3. And, when I first entered, I was like, what is this community like everyone's talking about? Is it some kind of place? Like, is it, a time or like it just was very vague to me. And I think people intentionally keep it that way is one thing. The other thing is that I think, at least my definition and what I've seen is that a community is just a group of people whose incentives are aligned. And that's often like harder to do than you think because, like a group of people, how can you get all of their incentives to be aligned and not overcomplicate things or not mismanage things? I think that's something that DAOs are still trying to figure out. So I guess my general answer to that would be that, communities are something that we're all still trying to figure out because like beyond just community, there's this idea that you're part of a community if you like hold a certain token, but then like what if you sell that token? Are you not part of that community anymore, even though you've contributed a lot, or even though you've been in there since like day one? Like, what does it really mean to be part of a community, like in the sense of like people? Like, I think that's something that we're all still trying to learn. But a really simple example I'll give is so like there was a DAO that I was observing and watching on my timeline, and it came up because it's just this flawlessly simple concept. It's called Dinner DAO. And basically you buy an NFT to enter this DAO. And the basic premise of the DAO is that you just get a bunch of people together to eat dinner like every month or something. And everything in the treasury goes to funding these dinners. And it's just like, it's like a very, very simple concept, but like underneath that concept, it's like you align the incentives of everyone in that community, whether they're like, like a whale, maybe someone who holds like 45 NFTs, or someone who just bought an NFT and wanted to try it. Like everyone's just trying to eat dinner, right? So I think something like that is like, you can very much determine like what the community is. But obviously there are other DAOs and communities where that concept is not so clear. So I think, that's something to be worked out together. And I'm still wondering about this question myself. So thank you for bringing it up.
Great explanation, I say. Thank you for sharing. I think it's good that we talk about these things because it helps us to process and it helps us to, like, I guess, eventually define it properly. And as you're talking about this dinner DAO, I was thinking about an immigration DAO, which would be really great. Joy and I, we talk about that a lot because, a lot of foreigners who travel to different countries, they have a lot of abilities and they're able to give so much to whatever foreign country they're in, but then they fall into this challenges with visas and stuff like that, and that can really affect their creativity, especially with creators. So we talk about how will that look like, and so it's nice to know that there's even a dinner DAO. So I guess an immigration DAO is very possible, and who knows, maybe Joy and I might start that.
No, that's awesome because I think, I'm like I guess like I'm technically an immigrant to China because I'm American and I came back here to work here, but that makes me an immigrant. And we call them like expats if you're not like going to the US, which is, it's probably a bit of racist undertones in that, but there is like a big expat community in China. And I think we all tend to have this sense of community because we have this like shared sort of experience of like being in one place as well as just like wanting to thrive in this one place. And I think that's another example of an incentive a lot of like these communities can align themselves around. I mean, there are like so many like incentives that you can really think about, like with an immigration DAO you could pool together in your treasury like a fund to find lawyers for people who need visa help. Or, with Ukraine DAO, like obviously the goal is just to raise money for humanitarian aid in Ukraine. And I think, it doesn't really matter like what kind of incentives you're chasing, as long as the incentive is shared by everyone in your community. I think that's what DAOs really need to figure out at the moment.
Oh, I love all these thoughts. I was just talking to another friend of mine yesterday. He's from Yemen and they don't really have like a lot of representation. And I was like, you should start a DAO, like for the creators of your place, and just really get into Web3 because you might never know who really want to help there and who's out there to who wants to contribute. And like I love that there's so many subcultures and sub niches that you can think about in this concept, that before you see like an organization or a brand you want to be part of, but it's so hard because there's kind of this friction between you and them, and it's kind of like you have to apply, you have to do all these things, but now you can actually say, listen, I want to be part of this. I'm committed, I bring these skills and I just want to add value, and I really love that idea. So I see a lot of potential for DAOs in the next years.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
And so my next question is a bit more about crypto and DeFi. And I want to know, like, what do you think can DeFi and cryptocurrencies enable for creators and people worldwide?
I guess because it's so recent, like one of the best examples is just to look at what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. I think that, the US and just the West in general has really, especially like, these corporations like PayPal, Netflix, all the companies that are pulling out of Russia at the moment, these kinds of financial sanctions are affecting everyday Russian citizens, people who are not connected, maybe anti-war in the first place, people just trying to make a livelihood. And I guess same with Ukraine, like if your assets are frozen, like what do you do? And I think that's the true potential of DeFi, is to kind of undermine this hegemony of the US dollar as well as these like US financial institutions. And just allow people to use like a censorship-free and permissionless system to actually transfer their money. And to, like a big thing is like sending remittances back home. It's very complicated. Your wire may not be received until like 5 days later, but if you do that with DeFi and crypto, it's much easier. And I think the other thing is like generally, I think people have really lost a lot of trust in these big institutions and banks to handle their money because Bitcoin came out of the 2008 financial crisis. Banks are not doing a good job of like giving your money back in terms of like, you put your money into savings account, you get maybe what, like 0.01 like APY or like APR. It's just, people don't really see the benefits of putting all their assets into one institution that you're supposed to trust, when these institutions like clearly don't have your best interests in mind. So I think that's the true potential of DeFi, is just this like global permissionless system for us to move money around. And I think that's going to help a lot of people who are affected by, like financial sanctions or economic warfare. I think there's going to be more of that in the future. And I think that, everybody should have the right to determine like where their assets are going, as well as like, like not be affected by one company pulling out of the country. I think it's highly unethical. And I think that in the future, that is something that people are going to think about.
Right. Yeah, I just remember I was somewhere last year and I wanted to pay a hotel, and I had to transfer money, and then I had to wait for 5 days, I think. I was doing it, through Western Union, and usually it's pretty fast, but I was thinking if I would have these tools, like if I would have just paid with crypto or paid, that way, it would have been way easier, and there's no middleman, and you don't have to wait the weekend to pay someone, or so yeah, there's I see a huge potential, and we already see it, like you said, people trust in crypto almost more right now than in fiat currencies. So I'm curious to see where it's all going in general. It's very volatile right now, everything, but I'm super excited for it, and the possibilities for creators as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So I was obviously looking through your Twitter, and you work with, I think you're full-time with Layer 3, and
So I'm actually part-time with Layer 3 at the moment.
Part-time. Okay, you're part-time.
Yeah, I've been working with them quite a lot. Yeah.
Right. And I really like should I say the tagline they have? It says "Earn crypto by doing shit." Excuse my French. And so like really heavily. Right. So I was just wondering, like, if you could kind of like explain, what that means. I think it's quite exciting and it's very attractive, but if you could share with our community what that means, and also what is the most exciting or interesting part of crypto for you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, generally speaking, like our Layer 3 is like a do to earn kind of platform. And I don't want to say platform because that's very, Web 2.0, but essentially we're trying to bridge Web 2 and Web 3 by sort of connecting like your off-chain work to your on-chain credentials. And one way to do that is, say like a DAO wants a task done. They want someone to design a graphic for their merch, or like they want someone to make a meme for them, or they want someone to write a blog post. And they basically like use Layer 3 to like say like we have a task available, like can anyone complete it? And then our community, like we have a lot of amazing contributors who will just step up and say like, yeah, I'll do it. And then this work, once they complete it, like, on Photoshop, on like, a Word document or whatever, they submit it to the DAO, and then we verify that, and then they get paid for it in crypto. And all of that part is sort of like verified on chain. So essentially, like, I think the very simple concept is that, you're doing tasks to earn cryptocurrency. But the bigger sort of picture is that, like this idea of like on-chain resumes, what does it really mean? Or like, what can we do if you have like a community of very passionate people who have, say, like contributed to a DAO, and then you want to activate that community with some kind of like campaign, or you want to have people like do this kind of task for your community, or you want to match someone, or you want to, find someone who can like complete this task because they're an expert at it. So all of this is like, verified on this publicly verifiable ledger, and we're thinking of all the ways we can like do to sort of bridge that, and the kind of work that you would do just, that's not on the blockchain, which we think is definitely going to happen as more and more people jump into Web3. We think that you're not just going to have people like speculating or trading like shit coins. You're going to have people who really want to contribute to a DAO or do some kind of work to learn about Web3. And then how they do that is they do it through like by earning these on-chain credentials. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
It almost seemed like there's a whole separate economy, if you think about CVs and like the traditional way of CVs, and now you're talking about on-chain credentials. It's kind of like crazy to imagine that Web3 is they're building like their own kind of community and old system almost, yeah, really interesting. It sounded like a Fiverr almost for like Web3, like a DAO is kind of like, okay, you need a person to do the management of the brand, and then one person is the designer, and then they just match, and it's really interesting.
Right, yeah. And I think the bigger sort of potential underneath that is that you're finding people who are passionate about your community because they have the potential to not just earn crypto, but also to earn like your native ownership token. So, like a lot of the people who list their bounties on our site, you can earn in like their native DAO token. And that's a really cool concept, is like, oh, now freelancers or now people who want to work for certain DAOs not only have the opportunity to just work for them in exchange for something, but also in exchange for ownership, which is a very, very new concept that I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's revolutionary, because usually if you work for someone, you don't think about that they're going to invest for you, kind of. And if you own the token of a DAO or you're part of something like that, then you're automatically like investing also in yourself. So they are investing in you and you're investing in your, like, it's a mutual relationship more with the people that you work with, and same with like influencers and fans, if they invest in you and but they also get the reward of being like early or having your token and all these things. I think that's really cool. You just mentioned that, you got into Web3 through the, sorry, let me go again, my
yeah, it does. Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
It almost seemed like there's a whole separate economy, if you think about CVs and like the traditional way of CVs, and now you're talking about on-chain credentials. It's kind of like crazy to imagine that Web3 is they're building like their own kind of community and old system almost, yeah, really interesting. It sounded like a Fiverr almost for like Web3, like a DAO is kind of like, okay, you need a person to do the management of the brand, and then one person is the designer, and then they just match, and it's really interesting.
Right, yeah. And I think the bigger sort of potential underneath that is that you're finding people who are passionate about your community because they have the potential to not just earn crypto, but also to earn like your native ownership token. So, like a lot of the people who list their bounties on our site, you can earn in like their native DAO token. And that's a really cool concept, is like, oh, now freelancers or now people who want to work for certain DAOs not only have the opportunity to just work for them in exchange for something, but also in exchange for ownership, which is a very, very new concept that I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's revolutionary, because usually if you work for someone, you don't think about that they're going to invest for you, kind of. And if you own the token of a DAO or you're part of something like that, then you're automatically like investing also in yourself. So they are investing in you and you're investing in your, like, it's a mutual relationship more with the people that you work with, and same with like influencers and fans, if they invest in you and but they also get the reward of being like early or having your token and all these things. I think that's really cool. So Sarah, you mentioned that you got attracted to Web3 through the pandemic, and what do you think has attracted most people into the space? Like what kind of values and what kind of things have been attractive for people?
I don't think I can speak for everyone, but for me personally, like I was attracted to Web3 because it's really simple. I was just finding like a way to do remote work. And crypto seemed like the most friendly, interesting, the most friendly and the most interesting industry for that. So I started looking into crypto, and then obviously, like, crypto is part of like Web3 now, and Web3 is so much bigger than just crypto. And I think what really drew me in was just how excited people are to be working on these things. I think that people are really passionate about the space, and I think that a lot of builders, they're coming from like, very established, like they may be coming from like either very established big tech companies like Fang, or they're just some like 16-year-old who learned how to code Solidity, and they're now just like managing, they maybe are managing like millions of dollars. And like I think that's really incredible, because I think it just proves that like this whole system of like meritocracy and like labor, where it's like you go to the office, you get a promotion, and then like you become like the head of a company, or you found your own startup. Like I think that's all just being sort of turned upside down by Web3, because there's so many new ways to like work. And there's so many like ways in which Web3 changes the relationship of our labor to like the capital that we actually earn on it. Where we're getting increasing returns on our labor, and not necessarily just like something that will stay stagnant for like the next 10 or 20 years. So I think that potential is something that people are definitely like thinking about, where it's like, what industry can I be in, or what space can I be in where like there will be growth, but it's also going to be like something I can meaningfully shape and contribute to, and really be like a leader in. And I think that that's part of the reason. And yeah, it's I think it's a really magnetic industry, I would say, like, but yeah, I think that's my general assessment.
Yeah, and again, back to your thread when you were writing about how you kind of got into the Web3 path, you said, to me, Web3 was the perfect combination of what I was interested in. And then you said governance, creator economy, digital communities. And I think these are all like really fabulous things about Web3. And sometimes it breaks my heart when I'm trying to like watch I guess videos on YouTube, we're still learning, right? Things are changing. There's always something new. And so you have to keep up with it. I see some like YouTube videos about why Web3 is a scam. And it really breaks my heart because, you're like a successful use case, I guess, and so what do you have to say about that? Because why do you think, as much as it's doing so much good already, yes, we haven't reached there yet. Everybody says we're not there yet, but then there are all these amazing possibilities. So why then do we have a group of people or some people who just think that this whole thing is a scam?
Yeah, I think I definitely understand that too. And I think it's really important that we be critical of all of this, because ultimately, like, just because the technology is here, it doesn't mean that it's just going to become some kind of utopia where like everyone's like WAGMI, and like, everyone's like going to make it. And like, I think there's definitely a lot of elements to Web3 that, are obviously like going to affect someone's perception of it. One is the multitude of scams and rug pulls that are coming out of the space. I think that's a huge problem. I think there haven't really been a lot of regulations and like accountability mechanisms created to sort of deal with this stuff. And I think, that's obviously going to be a giant hurdle, because so many people in the space are like pseudo anonymous, or they don't want to reveal their identity. And that's kind of the ethos of like all of Web3. But at the same time, like I think that's definitely something we need to consider in the future. The other thing is that, there is a tech side to it that I may not be super familiar with, but I think someone named Moxie wrote this very long article on like why Web3 will not reach mass adaptation. And in the article, it talks about things like, not everyone wants to run their own node, or not everyone is going to like, be decentralized in the way that like Web3 aims to be decentralized. And I think that's another important point to consider, is that like, a lot of people and a lot of the applications and like the the UI and UX in Web3 is very much like you have to self-custody everything. You have to, really be aware of like where your funds are going to, and like you have to know like once you make a transaction, like you can't take it back. There's no like bank to like give it back to you or like say like, oh, this was fraud. So I think like that is scary for a lot of people. That's a huge hurdle where like, a lot of people don't really know how to bypass the sort of technical like elements of like trying to understand how decentralization and how like the blockchain works. And I get it because like I was one of those people. I was like, what if I just get scammed like right away? So I think what we all need to do is just make the technical jargon a bit more like relatable or not relatable, but just dial it down to a point where everyone can understand, make, like find this compromise between like decentralization and like ease of use. And I think there are a lot of, valid criticisms of Web3. Like I totally understand where they're coming from because I was one of those skeptics as well. But I think for us, it's kind of a mission for us to figure out like, okay, like what is required for mass adoption and what is required for like, Web3 to truly be this place where like people are being held accountable, as well as a place where people can sort of achieve the ethos of decentralization that it really requires. And I think, that's also something I'm still trying to figure out as a newbie to this space.
Yeah, I love that, transparency, ease of use, and also making it really decentralized for all countries is really important because there's still countries who don't have access to it, or when I sometimes use something, it keeps breaking and then you're kind of frustrated and you don't want to use it again. And so I think it's really important also finding the developers that we can trust and that are really we all share this common mission and we stay true to the values that we put up for ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. I'm wondering, could you leave something with our audience, like if they want to get into Web3, like any advice or key takeaways from like I think you have such an amazing journey, and maybe you can give them some little advice of like where they can start. I feel like a lot of young people feel a bit frustrated maybe from the the world or whatever, so maybe if they want to get into Web3, what would you say to them?
I would definitely say that, I come from a completely like non-technical background. Don't be afraid of like all the jargon that's out there, because a lot of these things you just need to dig into them and talk to people and, look at them and look at the concepts deeply to understand what they're about. This language is often used to gatekeep and, to mask a lot of like the underlying like features of what Web3 is all about. But I think like, anyone can have this deep technical understanding if they continue to just try and like have this curiosity to learn. I think the other advice I would have is just like, don't be intimidated to reach out to people, because that's what I was doing. Like when I was on Twitter, I just talked to people. I was just responding to their threads. I was like looking into stuff I found interesting. Everyone's just really friendly. And I think there are definitely like pockets to sort of avoid if you don't want to get harassed or feel like, like there are people who will make you feel like an idiot. But I think as long as you have the determination and the drive to learn about this and you're passionate about it, then I think you all have the ability to succeed in this space, just because it is such a rapidly moving and like collaborative space right now. It may not be like that in the future, for by the way, like it could change, but right now it's an excellent time to sort of get into it, and good luck. I'm also on the same journey.
We're all in it together, and this is why I love NewForum, because we get to have these open conversations and we get to like pretty much bring that awareness, how to get involved and also the pros and cons. We touch on like every bit of it, and I think I really love the perspective that you brought today, and I think our community will really enjoy this episode. Thank you so much. And I think if you could share your social platforms, it would be really great so they can find you and follow you, because I think I'm already following you. If not, I would love to follow you because I want to see what you're all about. Yeah.
My socials are, so if you look up sarahlou.eth on the Twitter search bar, that's me. But my username is Meowlark, so MEOWLLARK. Mostly on Twitter at the moment, but yeah, feel free to DM me or give me a shout. I'm happy to chat with everyone. Yeah, I have to head out, but thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, and definitely check out Sarah's Twitter. I think she had amazing tweets that you have there, super funny. And thank you everyone for being part of today's episode. And if you want to get more involved, also make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are NewForum and NewCoin, and we also have a private Telegram group. And we're going to put all the links as well as Sarah's Twitter in the bio. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And we see you guys in the next episode of NewForum. Thank you.
In the next episode. Thank you.
Bye. Nice talking to you guys.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time.